Welcome to Cycling Demystified, brought to you by Foundation Bike Fit and Frequency Cycleworks, the podcast where we help you take your cycling to the next level by sharing knowledge from expert bike fitters, mechanics, and the hidden players within the bike industry. This week, Chris Hendy from Strength for Endurance interviews Wei, lead bike fitter at Foundation Bike Fit, to discover the fundamental prerequisites for creating a high-performance bike position. Wei and Kriss reveal their admiration for the achievements of their age group athletes and the real reason why lifestyle athletes are not addressing the aches and pains they know they need to fix. This is a discussion loaded with practical value as well as key principles which any endurance athlete can use to balance success in the sport they love with the responsibilities of everyday life.
All right, my friend. Good to see you. Wei, thanks for joining us on the podcast, my friend. Thought it'd be really kind of great to sort of just kick off and find out. Well, I'm just out of curiosity. I would love to find out more about how you got into bike fitting in the first place.
Yeah, funny enough, that's probably one of the first questions I get asked every day when people come into the studio. I'm like, so how did you get into this? This is a pretty niche kind of profession. But for me, it was just a natural evolution from where I was. We just kind of, I think a lot of people just kind of fall into this kind of stuff. Nobody comes out and says, yes, I'm going to be a bike fitter. I'm going to go do that kind of training. But I guess it's similar to how a lot of health professionals, certainly health professionals I meet, kind of get into kind of what they're doing. And generally, they're just trying to help people out and help people through solving their own issues. So I've worked in the bike trade all my life. Started working out in bike shops, fixing bikes, selling bikes, fiddling around. And really only working in bike shops because I love bikes and just wanted to do something I enjoyed straight out of uni or through uni and, just scraping together pounds so that I could have a bit of beer money at the weekend. But eventually ended up in a bike shop which sold custom-made bikes. So every bike that they sold was made to order, made to that individual. And so as part of that, you had to figure out what component sizes they needed, what stem length, what handbar width, what kind of saddle they needed. And so we had to bike fit them. Essentially, that's what bike fitting was. And so someone kindly took me under their wing, or like a team of people took me under their wing and showed me what the process was. And we went through and fitted a lot of different people. And it was just a case of getting stuck in and looking at humans moving and trying to strap them to a bicycle and make them happy. And it seemed to get pretty good results. So I was pretty happy with that. And then through that kind of process, also becoming aware of my own issues and doing more riding, doing a bit of racing, stressing the body more and figuring out, I'm getting a few aches and pains here. It always seems to be in the same place. And so it becomes a process of trying to solve your own issues. And if you can solve those issues, then you see that in other people and you begin to want to help them out. So that was just the process of like kind of getting into bike fitting and seeing the value of it and how I could help other people. And I've done other things in between, but always come back to bike fitting.
What's the from my understanding, there's a couple of different models that you could use to kind of fit people to bikes. I mean, are you aware? I mean, do you have a preference? I mean, do you have is there a logical order or preference that you kind of like to work with, or what's your kind of way of going about things?
Yeah, I guess it's a bit like the PT world as well. There's so many different methodologies, or people have their own proprietary, kind of, this is how I do it, FMS, or functional movement screening, or whatever it is. They have their own way. But and it's just the same in the bike industry. And there was a kind of a dream within the bike industry at some point within bike fitting, because it's a relatively young profession, I would say. It's only 20, maybe 25 years, 30 years old, something like that, really, as a profession in itself. And so there was a great dream that you could kind of measure a body and measure a lot of angles and how a body was kind of creating different angles, and that would allow you to create the equation or formula that would solve, all the bike fit issues.
Yeah.
And it's, just the same as if you squat to this kind of angle and your torso angle is this and your knee bend is this, then you're in a good squat. But, we now know that human movement and body movement has to take in a lot more than just making the kind of shapes or angles that you are, someone's decided that is the correct angles and so on. So, yeah, a lot of bike fit methodologies started out with this kind of thinking in trying to create a formula. It's always been about trying to create a formula to map that human movement and create the right answer. Even back in the 80s, they said, to create the right seat height for you, you had to measure your inseam and multiply it by a certain, 0.883, I think it was, the Lemon method and so on. And somehow these guys came up with this kind of formula, and it was supposed to apply to everybody.
Fascinating.
But, we know humans just don't work like that. It's much more individualized process.
Do you find that people still, you must probably face this, the way people think they know what they need in terms of almost the angles, the kind of and it's down to the numbers, which is fascinating because the body changes daily, in terms of age and muscle tissue atrophy and joint stability and joint function and injuries. The list is literally endless in terms of working with someone's physiology, and to then try and map that out and then to almost have an equation that is going to literally be exact to that person, and then that's going to then stay the same for what, years? I don't know how often the frequency of someone having a bike fit with you and then seeing them again. We see physical changes in someone within weeks. Yeah, positive changes. If you're working on your mobility or range of motion, or you're working on your strength and conditioning, you'll see positive changes very quickly. So it's funny how you can get a fit and then someone's eye, that's it. They're good for, I don't know how long, you tell me, but it's surely that's something that's going to be evolving consistently, right? If you're putting the work in, your body's going to be changing quite frequently, right?
Yeah. And I think it's about awareness level, certainly formulas and a kind of easy way of getting people into a position that's relatively okay.
Yeah.
Might be, maybe that's enough to kind of get them enjoying their sport and enjoying bike riding, and it will get them so far. But the deeper you get into your sport, the more committed you are into what you're doing on a daily basis, or day in, day out, weekly, whatever. And these kind of ambitions grow into kind of bigger dreams, and you start racing and taking on big events and things like that. Then you have to kind of level up your knowledge and awareness and kind of what your body is doing. And maybe some of it's cultural and deviating away from kind of just bike fit and kind of movement and so on, but it's just a cultural thing, I think, of people kind of maybe outsourcing what they want to know about their own bodies, and thinking that there's a hack, there's a formula for everything. You can just plug in the numbers and off we go, and that's you. But it's difficult to face the reality that humans are just very complicated, and everyone's an individual, and there is no real formula, and you have to take some responsibility for your own body.
Yeah. Well, we face the same situation, obviously, within the strength and conditioning world, especially working with riders, swimmers, runners, especially. Everyone's looking for that one exercise, that one kind of specific exercise that's going to solve X, Y, or Z, that they're struggling with, or it's going to give them the extra power, the extra speed, the corrected imbalance. And you're like, I wish I could give you something that is going to give you that. And it's not fair, because obviously in this world, and same like social media world and YouTube and everything, like on top of those formulas now, and on top of those kind of our baseline and understanding of exercise, we now have people like literally promoting the number one exercise or the 3 best exercises or whatever it is, and it's like, it's not fair, because it's like the body is so complex, right? And like I know we've talked about this before, but where like if we're working with someone who's had a bike fit 12 months ago, but in that time they've been working on their physiology, they've been working on their bodies, they've been building, they're now riding with more, they're riding greater distances, they're going with more, like their bodies will have changed. So it's like there's value in you going and reassessing that and going, right, let's have a look at you again, because the body will have changed. I don't know, what's the frequency of your, like, if you're seeing someone coming in, how often people coming back in, and how important do you think it is for them to get their positions changed, checked?
Yeah, it really depends. I think you hit the nail on the head of it depends on what they're doing with their bodies. Yep. If you suddenly do a ton of S&C work and your body mobility changes, your strength changes, your ability to hold a certain position changes, then it's always good to come back to reassess. Usually, adaptation changes. It depends. Like, it can be kind of the time of year as well, when they have their bike fit and when they do that kind of work. So, traditionally, if you go into the off season in the winter, and that's when usually endurance athletes will kind of start to do their or focus more on that kind of strength and conditioning work. Yeah. Although you should be kind of doing it year round, people will put a bit more emphasis on that because you can't go ride your bike outside so much and so on. So then, bodies will change in that manner. And so when you come back to your bike in the kind of springtime or just before springtime, then things will be different again. And so usually that's when we see the most people coming back in for kind of refits. But also, winter can be a great time for testing kind of new positions, seeing where you could be. Can you work towards a particular position and so on? So if people are fairly dedicated riders, we'll see them a minimum of like at least once a year. Yeah. We try to get them back in again. Ideally, I'd see them more because things do change and so on. But I understand there's constraints around time and money and all the rest of it. So it really depends on that person. And some people, they do go for years without kind of changing their position, and their position can accommodate enough of their body. But they might not be riding at such a high level or for such volume or consistency, all that kind of stuff.
Could we explore what are the biggest limitations you're seeing coming into the studio? But then also I think it's important to talk about from a strength and conditioning point of view, like when I'm working with any type of rider, I'm looking at what are their constraints, what am I looking at straight off the bat? Like if I look at their squat technique, am I looking at the mechanics there, and then how that translates onto the bike and from what you're seeing. But what are the biggest constraints first? What do you think you see reoccurring themes?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's always two parts of the bike fit, so the bike and the body. The bike has to be positioned correctly, and the bike creates the environment for the body so that the body can perform at its best. So that absolutely, bike fit itself around the bike itself has to be done, and that has to be set initially. That's a fundamental kind of part of bike fitting. Yeah. But the body is the engine. That is you. You are powering the bike. The bike's not going to ride itself, and the bike's not going to, power itself for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, and we're talking ultra distance kind of riding now, like days and days on end. So your body has to do that. Your body has to have the capability of staying and producing power and holding form and posture for the given duration that you want it to for your given event. And so there are some prerequisites to being able to do that. In terms of in terms of just simple movement, simply being able to hinge is probably the most critical part of being a bike rider. like you're essentially sitting for hours on end in a hinged position, and can you hold that position? Can you generate power from that position? But the prerequisite for kind of like power is also stability. So if you don't have stability in your body, you cannot control the kind of power that you have, the movement that you have, then you're not going to get anywhere faster, and you're not efficient. And endurance sport is all about efficiency. So we need to create the environment through the bike. We need good enough mobility and posture that we can hold kind of good posture, hinge through the hips, have stability through each leg. So cycling is a single leg sport, just like running and walking and all the rest of it. But yes, we only power through one leg at a time. And so if you have an imbalance through one leg or the other, then that's going to show up on the bike at some point. Working on your single leg stability is critical, or that single leg, everything like stability, power, and endurance, and so on. So that hinge ability and single leg ability is probably the main things that we look at when it comes to kind of on bike, or the basics. That's where we start.
No, I love what you said there. The bike creates the environment for the body to work at its best. So I kind of wrote that down because that's kind of cool. That's a really nice way of saying it. But yeah, you're right. Like you try to create that optimal environment. But then obviously if you're building out the body, and that's obviously what our obsession would be, is building the body. It's like, right, we work a lot with different clients, moving back and forth, between us, and it's like looking at that person and going, right, how can we make that person more efficient? How can we improve that power to weight ratio? And because I mean, obviously what's fascinating is how the body compensates and how it kind of, it still works. It still produces a hell of a lot of power, but it's like, and as you probably see, like it can do it dysfunctionally. Like they can be sat, they can produce way more power through one side. They can be sat off the saddle. They can be holding some horrible positions at times when they start to fatigue. But for us, I mean, my obsession is like, right, ankle mobility, hip mobility, shoulder thoracic mobility, like they're like the low hanging fruit. How can we improve those for someone? And then as you say, like hip hinge pattern, can they load the hamstrings, the glutes? Can they find extension through their pelvis? And what's their single leg strength like? It can be quite basic, but actually I don't know, like, this is another conversation, another topic, but it's like the barriers of entry for a lot of people why aren't, for a community of riders who obsess about the metrics and the data and are coming in obviously in the frame of mind that they want to find better, more movement efficiency, why aren't they then obsessing about, and this is probably a question, just an open question to you, like why aren't they then going away and completely obsessing about their own biomechanics? So like why, if you can't hinge at the hip effectively, you can't load your single leg confidently, you can't produce power through one left leg versus right leg on the ground, like isn't that going to then translate poorly onto the bike? So if that is the case, then why wouldn't you be then, is it just maybe they don't know what it looks like? I mean, maybe that's the education is now, or the understanding of what that S&C looks like. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Like this is a question we ask ourselves and our clients all the time, and they are some great athletes. Like the best athletes that we kind of work with are those that have an awareness and want to work on all aspects of their kind of cycling, whether that's kind of like changing bits of the bike, but also their biomechanics. I think it's just culturally an awareness thing, and I'm probably going to ruffle a few feathers to say this here, but changing bits about the bike and measuring your power and heart rate and all the rest of it is easy. You just strap something on, and there's even stuff that tell you how well you sleep and so on these days. Everything, well, supposedly everything can be measured, but actually the stuff that really matters, the biomechanics, how just the complexities of how your foot moves through that kind of loading pattern. Where does your knee go? Where does your hip go? Does it drop? Does it twist? Does it rotate? That's really difficult to measure unless you get an expert to look at you and use their eye. And so understanding your biomechanics is difficult, and so people kind of don't want to do the difficult stuff.
Yeah,
it's easy to go out and smash some miles and do some hill repeats because, you just have to go and smash it. But to really understand and learn what your body is doing and how to appreciate kind of what it's trying to do, that's difficult because your body does it automatically too.
Yeah, isn't it? I mean, I find it, I'll forever be obsessed and fascinated by the fact that you'll be sitting in front of someone for the first time and they'll be already working at incredible. Their output will be massive. They've done Ironmans, they've done huge sportifs, they've done multi-day rides, but yet they've been harbouring massive imbalances because of a previous injury, because of not riding for decades and then coming back into it, and they've been harbouring some restrictions. But it is deeply fascinating how we at the body can produce significant amount of power and endurance for a long time. Very, very, very poorly. They sit off the saddle, they don't have very good aero position, they harbour a lot of pain and discomfort, but you can still ride, you can still do it. Yeah. But I know for a fact, I get excited because we're working with clients between our companies at the moment, and it's there's physiological changes happening to some of the some people that you've fitted out on the bike. And their mobility's changed, their hip, it has improved, their hip function, their hinge pattern, their single leg strength, all their numbers have increased. So I'm already starting to think we're nudging them towards getting another fit because it's going to have improved. Their position to sit deeper into that position, to sit better on the saddle, to produce more power through the feet. It's definitely going to have, and that's how is that not addictive? I would find that addictive if I knew that I could improve my bike position in the space of months, as in to improve that, to find a better aero position, to increase your FTP, whatever those numbers need to be. That's why I keep saying, hey guys, heads up, we're retesting soon within your S&C work, but also in that window, let's have another look at your bike fit and that's what we do, isn't it? Between us, where we're nudging people towards it because things can change pretty quick if you have some of these S&C behaviours in place, working on your mobility, working on your single leg strength and stuff. I find it addictive because I love seeing change in people, and then even more so when you're looking on someone on a bike, you're awesome, because it's an even more restricted environment where you can really highlight those changes even more potentially. So I love it.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's and that just comes down to kind of different athletes, I think, and you can kind of see it in the different families of riders that we come through the studio, and kind of what they're in.
Can you define that? What does that mean? Family of riders. What does that mean? The different groups of.
So a mountain biker versus a road rider versus a time trialist or triathlete. Things like that. So time trialists are super obsessed about every little optimization that they can find, because their main goal is to go as fast as possible.
Yeah.
But they all know that the job is never done. There's always more to explore, and so really the mindset is to kind of just go through that kind of exploration, whether it's kind of changing their body, changing their positions, and they have a much more acute awareness for how to work on their body in order to get into an aero position and so on, and will work on their body to extremes as well. You see some professional riders, the stories that you hear for what they're prepared to do to their bodies to get to a certain point is just kind of crazy.
I've been in the company of riders when we're living abroad. I'm not going to say too much detail, but the conversations around the coffee table where people are talking about how little they've eaten, or it was almost like a competition to drop their weight as much as possible, and how when they're building towards an event or something, and these, they're not healthy conversations, but they're kind of what they perceive as optimal performance conversations, where you're trying to improve your strength, your power to weight ratio by dropping the wrong one almost. You're kind of pushing, but it's, again, I'm fascinated by this mindset though, because what you're saying there, the characteristics of someone who is obsessing about the nth degree, those details in terms of their time trial position, then please tell me that every single one of those individuals is also obsessing about how much lean muscle tissue they're working with, and their range of motion through their joints, and are they functionally off the bike as strong, as mobile, as powerful as they could be. I question that, right? I'm probably, you'd say,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And, you can become way too much of a cyclist. As a cyclist, you basically spend your whole time kind of like hinged over. And there's a classic kind of meme of the old dude in the Alps who like kind of shuffles along to the shops all bent over, and you're like, God, this guy looks terrible, and you can hardly walk to the boulangerie and like pick up his baguettes. And then you see him the next day out on the bike, and he's like absolutely smashing up the mountains because he's basically molded his body into like that bike position. And yeah, your body will do that, but is that healthy? Is that kind of what you want?
How many people can survive that type of lifestyle and sustain it without chronic hamstring tendinopathies, lower back issues? Like I guess this is the thing, isn't it? Like, there's optimal performance where you're getting paid to be a rider, and you're looking to find every you're willing to sacrifice all the other kind of lifestyle things that come with being healthy. Versus, okay, where's that line where you want to also have a health, you want to function healthily on a day-to-day basis and be a father and go to work and everything. So that's why from our point of view, it's always like, right, like you've got to be working on other things to make sure that you can maintain it. They can maintain that level of performance. But as you say, like it's each to their own, isn't it? As of what they want, that's what they want. And as you say, it's probably cultural as well.
Yeah, I think you make a really, really important point there about, just living life. We have to maintain a certain level to be healthy and to be able to do the things that we want for the rest of our responsibilities, being a father, being a husband, being able to work, do all that kind of stuff, be there for your friends and family and your loved ones. And, it is, I think, it's probably you that said this. It's a privilege to be able to, do all the endurance sport that we love. It's not a necessity. It's a privilege to be able to do this. To be able to live a healthy lifestyle actually doesn't actually require that much kind of exercise, but there is a certain baseline that we need to maintain. And as we kind of move into these kind of endurance sports, and sports are getting more and more extreme each year, then that's placing more and more demand on our bodies. And can we keep up with that? And the other point you mentioned was that comparison with professional sports. Like we always look up to the professionals as the role models in many ways, and they are held as what is possible within the sport, but what is possible is not always healthy. You've gone to an extreme. The whole definition of that professionalism is you've taken something way beyond what normal is, and you've pushed it to an extreme, and with that comes extreme consequences as well. And so we can look up to these guys as amazing kind of specimens, but I very much think that professionals are almost like a different species.
Yeah, I think when you work, I've worked with like ultra distance running and things like same thing. I think a lot of people now, I don't know, I feel there's a strong lean towards people admiring more the age group, the top end age group athletes more so, because you admire the fact that they're mums and dads and they're probably working full-time jobs as well as performing at insane ability, and performing insane results, and it's because it's like you can almost respect that more, because they're like, how in the God's name are they able to juggle all of it, all that training volume, all that obvious focus to be able to produce those types of results, but also they're a mum, they're a dad, they're working as they're working a, I don't know, just to say nicely, a 30-hour week, but probably a lot more than that. There's, I don't know, I feel like there is a strong lean towards those individuals. Like the people admire them almost more because it's like more realistic. It's more admirable, right? Because as a professional, being a husband to a professional triathlete, it's a different lifestyle. Like they're sacrificing a hell of a lot to do that, but they're potentially not always kind of. I mean, actually, I say that I shouldn't say that about my wife Polly, because she was working. Polly was working 2 different jobs as well as being as well as that. So that was one of our biggest problems, that she was overtraining. Yeah. But no, I think there's a difference there, isn't there, between the amateur and the professional kind of the role models that we have, and what the qualities we're looking for, I think, in some of those,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's usually it's the singular focus of the professional, which gives them the ability to kind of do what they want to do. And I know, like, professional lifestyles are also difficult, and you have to navigate a lot of different things that we don't see behind, the scenes and so on. But yeah, at the same time, like age groupers, you're working 40-hour weeks, you're having to juggle family, you're having to, make sure you get enough sleep and recovery and all the rest of the stress, and you're being asked to perform both at work, at home, and, through your hobbies. That is a lot. And so, we do have to ask people, and often it's conversations that they don't want to have, and so we have to be careful kind of moving around them. Yeah. But we do have to ask the questions as professionals and people who are essentially working to kind of help people live the best life that they can through their sport and so on. So yeah, we do have to ask the kind of hard questions sometimes, and sometimes people aren't ready to kind of deal with it.
Like what? Sorry, what sort of questions?
Like, are you, how much you're committing to your sport, or what you're doing to your body through your sport? Yeah. Are you doing in the best way that you could be doing it? Yeah. And are you obsessing over certain things? More so than which kind of more distracting, or they're actually an indicator that you could be you're running away from something else.
Well, I think that's, I'm with you with this. Like, it's one of the hardest things you can ask someone that you're working with, where like the easiest way to coach someone or work with someone is just to give them what they want. Like, you just keep giving them what they want, like more training, give them the program that they think they need, give them what they want. But actually, great coaching or great professional help is often going to is quite uncomfortable, because you're like, you've got to challenge them on all the things that they're not potentially doing enough of, or maybe they've never even considered, or they're not, or they're completely neglecting. Like, it's and it's fueling enough, recovering enough, like it's taking those periodic rest days, like it's thinking about your strength and conditioning. Like, a lot of it's are you managing all those other stresses in your life? Because it's just you're dealing with lifestyle athletes, people who just want to just play, just train, but there's a dark side to it, and I don't know if you see it, but like, there's a dark side to where people don't talk about it enough, but there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of struggle, there's a lot of discomfort, like, out there, that people aren't consistently performing it at the level they want to. They are picking up injuries pretty frequently, or they're living with pain, and it doesn't get covered, I don't believe, a lot of the time in kind of in media enough, like, where like, and I believe from the strength and conditioning point of view, like, people just kind of almost mock it. It's the last thing they think about, but it's the very thing that will keep them doing what they want to do. And it's like, but it's the perceptions around it. So what do you think the perceptions are? Like, why isn't there a stronger embrace sometimes for some people to, like, oh yeah, I do some form of movement practice, or I do some form of strength training 2 to 3 times a week? Like, how often do you hear that? Or am I?
It's definitely getting better. I mean, maybe because we're kind of finding those athletes who want or are more aware of it. Yeah. But absolutely, it's not. So certainly in cycling, it's a very new thing to embrace, that kind of strength and conditioning. Before, it was all about like just spending a lot of time on your bike, not eating very much, eating lettuces, riding up mountains, that kind of stuff. And so a lot of it's cultural, and a lot of the culture around cycling is around suffering. So I used to work for like quite a big cycling brand, and their motto was glory through suffering. You would, through suffering and pain and pushing yourself through the extremes, that was the dedication to your sport. That was that you were living up to. And sure, that is always, something you have to do as an endurance athlete. You're essentially, going against your body's wishes in many ways.
Yeah, of course.
Telling you to stop. But the question always comes back to, are you in control of your discomfort? Are you in control of your suffering? Suffering should be a choice. It is not, forced upon you. So, if you push harder on the bike, if you ride faster, ride harder, then your muscles are going to ache. Everything's going to ache because you're doing more work. But every time you get off the bike and you've got like saddle sores, your knees hurting, you've got numb hands or numb feet, stuff like that, that was not your choice. That is not something that you wanted or put, on your body. And so those are clear kind of warning signs that your body's trying to tell you something. Pain is just a teacher. Pain is just trying to, your body trying to tell you something. And so you have to differentiate between that kind of pain that is choice and pain that is just kind of forced upon you. And that's where I think a lot of people kind of struggle, because they think all pain is like the same pain. Mm. And I think, you were talking about that earlier, just pain is, it has to be a choice. And, once you can only make those choices if you're aware of kind of what you're doing and how your body's performing and things like that. So,
oh, yeah. Really well said.
I'm not sure if that.
No, really well said, man. I think that's a lot of truth there, like differentiating the difference between it, like understanding that actually you don't have to live in pain. Like it doesn't have to come part and parcel with it. Like, hell yeah, you've got some climbs coming up, put head down, put the work in, you've got to grind, and that's it comes with the territory. And I think that's what we all kind of seek. I mean, you seek out discomfort. It's certainly, I do for sure. Whether I'm lifting, whether I'm running, whether I'm riding, like I'm looking for that little place where I can kind of put in some work and put in that little grind. But the dysfunctional pain, the reoccurring kind of agonizing pain that kind of follows you around the rest of the day, that debilitating pain. I mean, the pain that takes you away from the sport that you want to do, like that is unacceptable. And that's obviously that. And when there's behaviors that could be in, like there's certain routines and exercises and drills and habits you could be putting in place pre-ride, post-ride, like just to sort of alleviate that, to bring more balance to the body. I think it comes with education, as you say. Like I think it's differentiating what that pain, those different discomforts are, but then also installing better drills, better habits, better exercises that are unique, that are individualized to that person, and what are they dealing with, what they're struggling with. But
but I think this is the difficult thing. Like figuring out you and your body is difficult, and it requires a kind of mindset of wanting to go and learn and to figure that kind of stuff out. And that's why people would prefer to just kind of keep pushing, because they kind of believe that, if I just keep pushing, maybe it will just go away.
Yeah.
But usually it doesn't. It just gets worse. And so, realizing that, things are getting worse, and that's a sign that your body's trying to tell you that, try and change something, please. Otherwise, I'm going to, my limb's going to drop off. Then
I'd have to you must see it all the time, different body shapes, body sizes, different somatotypes, like body types, and coming into the studio there. But I have to lean into, when you hear, when you kind of know what that mindset potentially might be, I'm just going to push through it. I'm going to keep putting the volume on top of my body. I'm just going to, hopefully you've also got to go and flip it and go, but you wouldn't just keep ragging a car that has got, the wheels are out of alignment, like your engine's kind of struggling, it's running on, it hasn't got enough fuel in the tank, whatever it is, you're not going to keep ragging it, adding more volume and pushing harder on the accelerator, because at some point, there's going to be an almighty bang, there's going to be an explosion, you've got to drive off the road, whatever it is. And so you've got to kind of bring them back to that kind of biomechanical kind of you can't just keep pushing through this, because that dysfunction is only going to get louder. That minor issue over the next 100k is 100k, 150k of riding, 200k of riding, whatever they're doing, is going to manifest in some monster that it's hard to even predict what that monster is going to be, but lower back flare up, hamstring pull, strain, whatever it could be. But it's you've got to keep. When I'm working with a cyclist, especially as you say, when they're analytical like that, I keep going, right, well, that thing there, that imbalance we're noticing, imagine that after 100k of riding, or the fourth and fifth climb you've had of that day, what is that going to start to look like? How is that going to manifest? And it just gets worse, right? Over you either, whether it's intense speed you're putting into someone, or you're putting intense volume into someone, those smallest cracks or weaknesses are going to be magnified. But what are the you must be when you see like different body types coming into the studio, you must kind of like, sometimes you're almost excited to see what their mechanics look like on the bike, because you're like, right, how are we going to unpack this? Because it must be, I mean, I find it fascinating on a daily basis looking at someone's squat pattern or looking at the way someone lands, or it must be, I mean, what are the common things like you see? I mean, is it hamstrings? Is it lower backs? Is it, or what's the kind of a common struggles? Or
all kinds of things. So I guess my job's interesting in that, I also spend a lot of time looking at people squatting, hinging, deadlifting, single leg stuff, just to get an idea of what their body is doing. But then we've got to somehow map that kind of body onto a bike. And so knowledge of kind of like cycling, bicycle geometries, like, bikes come in different shapes and sizes and things like that. So how do we actually kind of get something that kind of fits underneath this body for this time at this place? And quite often that doesn't, like, what that bike will be might not match with what people want their bike to look like as well.
Yeah.
So there's a challenge both like kind of body-wise, but also kind of mechanically. And cycling is a very aesthetic sport, so everyone wants their bike to look a certain kind of way. But sometimes it's just not possible within their kind of morphology.
Yes.
Particularly if, for example, the classic is like someone who's long-limbed, so long legs, short torso, long arms. Great swimmer, but really difficult to fit on a bike because essentially if you've got long legs, then you're going to need a really high seat height. But if you've got a short torso, then you're going to have a really short reach to the handlebars. So you're going to have a very tall kind of bike, depending on how much this guy can hinge and things like that.
Yeah.
But generally, long legs, tall bike, short reach. And so most bikes, are built the opposite way around. They're generally, especially if you pick a race bike, then they're generally built for kind of a low position and very long, so you can stretch your body out and so on. So, and a lot of people aspire to have that race bike because they see it being raced at the Tour de France, so they think that that's the fastest bike for them. And then they try and fit their body around that, and they come out with loads of backache and hamstring pain and all the rest of it. And so, you have to go through that education and explaining kind of like why this bike doesn't work for you and so on.
Do you ever talk about like a climate? I mean, can we talk about it quite a bit? It's like acclimatization, like allowing your body to adapt to new positions. Like, it's amazing how we're all impatient anyway. Like, for all of us, like, we're all guilty of being impatient in this daily life anyway. But it's like, I'm guilty of it as well. Like, you can just like, you want to be in these better positions quickly. You want to find better range of motion, better mechanics. And it's like, man, like, give your body an opportunity to like adapt to those. But I think I'm guilty because obviously it's like, sports science background, always thinking about physiology, like tendons, ligaments, muscles. It takes time for those tissues to adapt and change, and then obviously with age and hormones and things, like, it's even more implications. But it's just, people want to be in these better positions very quickly, and you're like, you can get into those positions, but how long can you sustain those positions for? Like, how well can you optimally move in those positions for? It must be a frustration you see.
Oh yeah, I say that phrase exactly, like, all the time. Like, it's great. Okay, we can see that you have the ability to get into this position. Then how do we sustain it? And we don't know until they go out and test it.
Yeah.
And this is why we spend so much time on our fits, and we try and get people in. We offer free follow-up sessions, and we're kind of constantly asking people, hey, what's going on? Like, how's your body? How's it feeling? Is it still good? We need that feedback. It's definitely not like kind of cookie cutter. Okay, here you go. Here's a formula. Bang. Right, you're great. Off you go. You're good for like years and years. No, it just doesn't work like that.
No.
And absolutely, adaptation is like critical, because as soon as you put someone into a different environment, a different position, then you're asking their kind of muscles, their neurological system to work in a different way, and they just haven't built those kind of pathways to get the most out of that kind of position. Like, the body literally has to relearn. And I believe it's probably just the same as any adaptation to any kind of learning, like, learning a new language, learning a new squat pattern, learning, a new habit, it usually seems to be, it takes around about 5-6 weeks minimum to really kind of ingrain and establish that. Yeah. And so adaptation periods, they take time. And I get it all the time. I get emails and, phone calls all the time. People saying, I had a bike fit like last week. I smashed out like 200K. I went to Regent's Park. I did like a chain gang. And like, it's just, I've got my highest FTP ever, but I've got knee pain now. You just absolutely ragged your body silly in a new position. And you've just, topped it out, and your body's saying like, hey, buddy, you've just done a bit too much too soon.
You can't help it though, can you? It's just like, it is what it is, right? And that's, first weeks of anyone coming onto a S&C program, it's like, hey, I need you to work. I'm going to prescribe 60% efforts, but I need you to make sure it's 60% efforts. Find the range of motion, find good symmetry and technique, but you're not. I'm telling you, back off, because it's like, it's just too easy to add and to get to go for it. And then, as I said, in S&C it's muscle soreness or DOMS, etc., but which is the obvious one, or worst case injury. But you just got to stipulate it, reinforce it. First 2 weeks, first 3 weeks, we're not chasing any sort of intensity. We're just looking to acclimatise, because we're all guilty of it. We're getting back. We're excited. We're excited to play. New bike, new shoes, new setup, whatever it is. But oh my goodness, like, you're like, give your emotional state an opportunity to because otherwise you could have that peak, can't you, as you say, and then suddenly you have that almighty kind of crash where like your body's just like in pieces afterwards, and it's not the inconsistency you're looking for, but. Timelines wise, I think it's important to talk about timelines, because obviously we do a lot of injury timelines where people want to know that, how long it's going to take for them to get over certain things. But I imagine with a bike fit and certain things, it's like, people want to get into these optimal positions, but I imagine where they're starting as to where they want to be, they potentially could be like 6, 12, 18 weeks longer of like improving those positions to find that more optimal position.
I think 6 weeks minimum we see, and it just depends how much riding in the new position, what they've been doing, and have they been doing any of the other work that we kind of prescribe to them. And it is amazing when you see people again, like after 6 months and then a year, and you just see the changes. Like, it's so rewarding just to see that kind of change, and you see someone's really taken it on board, and they've kind of seen the light, but they've really taken it on themselves. And when they see that themselves, then they're like, yes, okay, I can see this working, and so on. The most difficult people we work with are always those who they come to us because they know that something has to change, but there's still resistance to kind of really committing to something different. And it just takes time both to build the habit, but also to build the awareness that, okay, this might be actually beneficial. So, again, like we see people in the studio 2 to 4 hours at a state. You can only do so much in that time. And so this is where those kind of like follow-ups become kind of ever more important. Just like saying, hey, how's it going? Like, is it working? Is it not?
What do you know what I love about your setup? We haven't talked about it actually, but your setup is awesome, because you've got the outdoor track around the building there. Like, it gets the person off the not static setup, but essentially the static setup, and then getting them out actually riding hard around the building. I mean, you say what your setup is, because it's amazing to those that don't know.
So, we're very unique in the fact that we have an outdoor track, an outdoor road circuit, and mountain bike circuit, where we can take people away from the studio, where we kind of set their position. Which is a much more controlled environment, and we need that kind of environment to kind of really explore the different positions. But then, different things happen when you go outside, when you go into reality, and you watch people go around corners and go up hills and change gear and brake, and are they comfortable? And what happens when you put some wind in, and so on. And it just allows for a much more in-depth and thorough kind of assessment of what this athlete is capable of. And you suddenly might realize that actually, their bike and their fitness is fine. They just need to work on some skills. Yeah. So there is a skill element to actually just like running is a skill, but also bike riding is a skill. And, you need skills of kind of being comfortable on the bike. And if you're comfortable, then, yeah, it's great.
Because this is at the Lee Valley Velodrome, isn't it, in London?
Yeah, the Olympic Park. So, yeah. And we're again, unique again that we have a mountain bike circuit or gravel circuit, so we can watch people riding off-road as well. So, like, literally nobody else in the country has this.
And as you say, there's different camps that you're obviously working with, as you say, like who are, say you've got the TT, you've got the mountain, you've got the road, and you've got different sort of top types, which, again, they're all going to be very... biomechanically, they're going to have very different needs and very different setups and different positions, and it must be fascinating. Must be fascinating.
Yeah, it blows people's mind because like you kind of say to them, well, you can be comfortable on a road bike, on a TT bike, and a mountain bike, but you're going to ride completely different positions and for different purposes. And that's interesting. So yeah, absolutely, we see a pretty broad range, and we see a lot of people just commuting to work. If you ride to work every day, that's a lot of riding. And, people wear rucksacks and they'll, have all kinds of luggage and things like that. And they want a more upright positioning so they can see the traffic. So there's lots of considerations in that. But you can absolutely do yourself, I've seen plenty of people who come to me because they're riding to work every day, but they've been seeing the physio because they've had this kind of chronic kind of knee pain, saddle soreness, something like that. And it's like after 7 rounds of physio, they're suddenly like, well, maybe it's not just the body, maybe it's the bike setup. And they'll come in and you're like, we just needed to lower your saddle 5 centimeters. And okay, now you can go and do the physio work. So, Bike Fit covers a broad spectrum, and
What if you say we work across the board with cyclists, runners, multi-sport athletes, but when you're putting yourself on a bike, it matters then because suddenly there's a significant other variable that we have to consistently consider. It's like, okay, and if you're changing bikes, changing cleats, changing position, it's okay, right? And there's an adaptation period. Now we got to make sure that your body's adapting to that. Whereas same thing with shoes though, if someone's changing running shoes and they've changed running shoe companies, you're like, okay, well, let's allow the body to acclimatize. Let's just see how the body tolerates it. Especially when you're working with someone who's going out for a 100k ride pretty much on a weekly basis, or who's doing at least 4 or 5 rides, or it matters. It does matter. But when it talks about timelines, to improve those timelines, I always say what are your habits off the bike? I'm always going to sing and dance about that because it's how would you speed up? If you wanted to speed up that timeline and speed up that acclimatization to that new position or new bike, new whatever setup, surely you want to be having some form of biomechanical strength and conditioning kind of program in the background that's improving hip mechanics, improving ankle mobility, improving thoracic mobility, improving single leg. It's again, I think it's just the perception of it. I think people just see it has to be in the gym, it has to be lifting heavy weight and stuff. And actually, there's so many components to strength and conditioning for a cyclist where you so many benefits. So many benefits that it's just working out what that individual needs. But if someone's riding 6 days a week, maybe they're commuting every day. Also, they probably find it hard to compute where that's going to all fit in. But again, it's just individualizing it. It's working out what they can do. Can they do it from home, etc. But yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't
it? Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we kind of like taking that holistic view, and that's why we kind of work together, and we are within a network of professionals that all have their own specialisms. And you work with physios and Sophie, and there's nutritionists and other people within the group, so that we can kind of look at the picture holistically. As you said, if you can be doing all the training in the world, but if your sleep's crap and you're eating crap and you're eating McDonald's every day, then you're kind of just holding yourself back all the time.
It does matter, doesn't it? It does matter. These things do matter. Whether you want to accept it or not, it's guys, this is the lowest hanging fruit stuff. You're spending thousands on whatever, and it's I'm going to call you out on the obvious. It's you move like shit, you eat like shit, you're sleeping like shit. You're in a you're fighting a losing battle, but as soon as you dial in a little bit, it's not like you have to like suddenly become professional with everything, all your standards. It's like, no, just consider things a little bit more, and bring a little bit of something, a bit more consideration in, and it flips the whole narrative very quickly, doesn't it?
But that is the problem. Like, buying a £10,000 bike, it's expensive, but it's way easier than, changing your eating habits or sleeping habits. So it's, it's just a click of a button. But, that's where the disconnect, I find, happens in cycling for sure. And just actually one other point I just thought about cycling is from a biomechanics point of view, is that cycling allows you to get away with a lot. Compared with, say, running. I always ask people if they run or not, and like all the cyclists go, "Oh no, it hurts my knees or it hurts everything." I'm like, well, there could be a reason for that, but cycling itself is a very low impact, low stress kind of sport in terms of the amount of stress that you're putting on the body as you go out and ride. And it is literally the most efficient vehicle out there. That's why we love the bike. It can take you hundreds and hundreds of miles with very little effort, or very relative effort. So you're kind of like running, and so that's the attraction. But in that, you can do that hundreds and hundreds of miles and stress your body not that much, and so you're not aware of some of the limitations of your body and what it's doing, or the biomechanics, or kind of your bike setup, until you've done, like, sometimes like people go for years and then suddenly realize, I've been doing myself a bit of a disservice. I could have been doing it better. And one of the most common kind of bits of feedback I get from people is like, "Oh, I wish I done this years ago." And you can just get away with it on the bike. So that education as a bike rider is kind of forefront in my mind all the time.
The running is the ultimate proving ground. Like it really does. It will test your levels of health in terms of your levels of strength and conditioning, and whether your body can tolerate impact, force. And on the bike, it masks it. You can, say your output, you can increase your output, as I say, because it's non-weight bearing. But that's why every cyclist we work with, we want them to have the ability to run again. Like, it's not like they want to be a runner. It's more the fact, like, hey, we would like you to get back to being able to run down the road pain-free, or go for an easy 5K if you wanted to, or whatever it needs to be. But it's just the fact that as a healthy athlete, healthy human being, it's like you want to be pain-free, and if we can get you pain-free on running again, and that's building out your strength and conditioning, making sure you've got no obvious imbalances, without a shadow of a doubt, you'll be a better rider, because pound for pound you'll be harboring less weaknesses, less imbalances, because we've eradicated them to get you back running, and as a result put you back on the bike again, and suddenly your output's twice what it was, because you're moving more efficiently, as you said earlier on. So it's a lot of cyclists would like to run again, but they've decided for some whatever reason life has said to them that they can't run. But it's more the fact that actually that's the thing that you want to work on, because actually if you can get your physiology back to running again to whatever standard you want, it will show up in your riding, and you won't have any of those weird, random injuries in the future, because you're not harboring any obvious weaknesses or dysfunctions. So Wei, conscious of time, my friend. Love. Obviously, we talked about Lee Valley Velodrome, and obviously you guys being based in London. But just I love our audience to kind of know where to find you, find out more about you. It'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're interested in bike fit, then you can find us at foundation.fit. That's our website. You can find all kinds of information on there. Got a blog, all the rest of us. You can find us on Instagram. Got a pretty healthy kind of Instagram. Post lots of examples on there of like kind of different situations and so on. If you want a little bit more long form, then we also do a podcast, which is called Cycling Demystified. So you can find that on all your different platforms. So come find us, come talk to us. If you've got any questions at all, just drop me an email, Wei@foundation.fit, or info@foundation.fit is probably easier. But or send Kriss a message, and I'm sure it all will.
Yeah, I mean, guys, we obviously do a lot of crossover work because it's just, as I said, that holistic approach, having that greater network around, and like like leaning into different strengths, different professional different professions. It's important. So we certainly work closely with Wei and the team. So awesome.
Yeah, thank you for all your support. It's been amazing. So it's great to have you guys, knowing that we have you guys to kind of help our riders.
No, it's a good synergy. It's a logical synergy. I think it's like it makes sense. But all right, my friend, thanks for joining us today, mate, and we'll speak soon.
Cool. Thanks, Kriss.
Here's what I want you to do. I want you to tell all your friends about me. At Cycling Demystified on Instagram. Tell everyone. And leave us a review on your podcast platform, whether it's Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, whatever. That would help us out a lot. Suffering from numb hands, tingling toes, and any other persistent discomforts when you ride? These are all signs that your bike fit could be improved. If you're bike fit curious, get in touch with Wei or Matt by emailing info@foundation.fit or finding them on Instagram @FDN_bikefit. Finally, for all your bike servicing needs, custom dream bike or hand-built wheels, go to www.frequencycycleworks.com or find me on Instagram @frequencycycleworks. Until next time.